Good to see everybody this morning, and it's great to celebrate with you, sing with you, and just enjoy praising God together through those songs. And I hope that you've already felt encouraged, felt challenged, and are just prepared to keep going with this worship, to celebrate God and who He is through His Word here in a few minutes. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you've chosen to take time this morning on your Sunday morning to spend it with us, to just open up your heart and mind to what God wants to show you this morning. And I'm convinced that if you're willing, that He will change you just a little bit, and He'll work in your heart and move you further in your relationship with Him, your understanding of who He is, who you are. And that's my hope, that's my prayer for you, that when you leave through those doors, that you will be different than when you came in. And I hope that that's your anticipation as well. If you're visiting with us today, we're just so glad that you're here. We hope and pray every week that when you visit, if you visit, that you feel welcome, you feel part of the family, you feel like you belong, and you feel comfortable here with us at Bethel. And I encourage all of you to do as Pastor Jerry already asked, if you use those communication cards, and just let us know what's going on in your life on the back of that card. Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, prayer requests, whatever it might be that's on your heart, whether you came with one coming into this morning, or you discover one in your heart and mind as we go through the service, write that down and let us know. And when we receive the morning offering, put it in that basket that we pass by. And if you're our guest this morning, that's all we're going to ask that you put in there. We're not going to ask you to write a check or give us some cash. Just let us get to know you a little bit and understand where you're coming from. And that makes a huge difference for us. And as Pastor Jerry said, we spend a lot of time on that on Monday morning, going through those cards, looking at them, praying for you, just discussing where you're at and what we can do to help you, partner with you in your journey, in your life. We are going through a series right now in the book of Proverbs. And so that just because I say series doesn't mean if you've missed that you're going to be behind in any sort of way. So if you can feel free to jump right in with us. We're going to be in Proverbs chapter 10 this morning. Proverbs chapter 10, it's going to be on page 829. If you grab one of the tan Bibles in the back, if you grab one of those, it's on 829. If you grab one of the brown Bibles, it's on page 549. And you can kind of turn there and prepare to look there with us. If you came this morning and you didn't have a Bible, you don't own one, and you grab one of those, that's yours. You can take it home. We want you to have it. You're going to put it to better use maybe than we will just sitting back there on the table. And so I encourage you to take that home if you don't have your own Bible. It's our gift to you. But when we started this series, I mentioned that there are plenty of times when and I'm assuming you do too, when we kind of feel out of our element in life. Whatever the situation might be, where we just aren't sure that we're handling life the right way, or that we're handling that situation the right way. Whether it's a decision that we have to make, or a task that we need to perform, or a response that we need to have. There are plenty of times, for me at least, and I would guess for you, that we just don't know for sure. I just don't know for sure that I'm doing this right. I don't know for sure that I'm making the right decision, or I'm responding properly. I want to be confident that if a situation comes up, that I'm going to be able to handle it in a good way. That I know that the outcome is going to be a good outcome, not because of good fortune or good luck, but because I've been prepared and ready to handle it in a good way. As a Christian, that means when a situation comes up, a decision comes up, a difficulty comes up, I want to handle it in a godly way. That's what I'm looking for in my life as I come across those things. That when I say I want to handle it in a good way, I want to be good at life, what I mean is I want to handle each situation in a godly way. I don't want to mess it up and do it in a way that wouldn't honor God. But I can't tell you how many times that I've been in the middle of something and I've thought, am I doing this right? Is this the right way to do this? And you have that uncertainty, you have those questions, am I doing this right? And I do mean, when I have the front of my dryer taken off right, and I'm staring at the parts inside, and thinking, am I doing this right? Is this really the best way to do this, right? Or when I've got chicken on the grill, I do mean that kind of, am I doing this right? Right? Is this supposed to be 165 or 170? It doesn't matter. But I also mean, and maybe you'll relate to this, when I'm sitting at night wondering if I'm raising my kids right. Am I doing this right? Am I doing this in a godly way? Or if I'm spending my money wisely, and you sit there and you think through the last month and you think, are we doing this right? Am I spending my money the right way, the godly way? Or maybe when I just had a hard conversation with a friend and I wasn't sure if I should let go or just give advice, if I should just let go and have that conversation, or if I should give advice or just step back with my advice. And you think back on that conversation and you think, am I doing this right? Am I handling this situation right? And in those quiet moments is when I wonder, right? Is this, am I good at life? And maybe that's you too. You've had those moments at night when it's quiet and you just think, am I doing this right? And I think we all hope we're doing life right. I think we all hope that we're good at life. And I think that we all wonder too sometimes whether we are actually good at life. As Christians, we should all want to live a successful, godly life. And the purpose of the book of Proverbs is to help us with that, is to help us live that informed, successful, disciplined, godly life. And we've been through this, and this is review for some of you, but that starts with accepting that God is the main character of my story. That I'm in the story too, but that God is the main character, and that He is both way more than me, but also close to and relatable to me. That's where that whole godly life starts. And if that's where we start, then the advice in this book in Proverbs is very practical. It's going to be very applicable for us to navigate life in a way that we can be sure, that assures us that we're doing it right if we start there. 2 weeks ago, we saw the advice that living a successful godly life means that when it comes to decisions, we have to know what we don't know. And we have to know that we don't know anything, that we can't trust ourselves, that we have to trust God, that God knows everything. And we can't trust that we do. We would always trust God. And last week, the advice we saw from Proverbs 3 is that living a successful, godly life means that we need to accept God's discipline. That because the difficulties or struggles or whatever it might be, that God is training us or correcting us out of love because He wants the best for us. And so to live a godly life means I have to accept His discipline, that He knows what He's doing, and He can see down the road that this is for my good. And so this week, our advice is to help us successfully navigate life in a godly way comes from Proverbs chapter 10. We're going to look at verses 4 and 5. Proverbs chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. And I'm going to read that for you out loud. Proverbs 10, 4 and 5 says this. It says, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. Now, at first glance, when you read Proverbs chapter 10, verse 4, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. When you read Proverbs 10:4, you're going to see this proverb. It seems pretty obvious what it's talking about, right? You're going to see this proverb is talking about diligence versus laziness. Those words are there, right? Diligence versus laziness. Solomon, and this is Solomon. We know that Solomon wrote the Proverbs in chapter 10. 10:1 shows you this is the Proverbs of Solomon. So he wrote this one. He points out the consequence of laziness and the benefits of hard work. That laziness has its consequences, and hard work has its benefits. And there are those practical truths here, right? That if you're lazy with your work, then you aren't going to make any money. Right? If you're lazy with your work, you're not going to make any money. But hard work brings with it financial benefits. It's a true story. And a lot of you have probably proven that one way or another in your life, that laziness doesn't get you anywhere, but hard work will pay off, that there are financial benefits to hard work. You don't make money when you're lazy. It's a true story. It's an easy concept. The New Living Translation, if some of you are looking at that version, it makes it pretty clear in its translation. It says that lazy people are soon poor and hard workers get rich. Lazy people are soon poor, but hard workers get rich. But the proverb continues into verse 5. It's not just verse 4. Verse 4 makes it very clear. Laziness is bad, hard work is good. But it continues into verse 5. And verse 5 adds a layer to our understanding of the truth behind the advice. This is helping us see what's behind the advice to not be lazy and instead work hard. And that has to do, verse 5 is going to show us that the truth behind laziness and hard work has to do with how we handle our time. Look at verse 5. It says, "He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son." So this verse 5 is going to add to our later understanding of verse 4. It's going to help us understand the advice to not be lazy. Why is he saying it? What's the truth behind it? Solomon is going to lead us to the deeper truth with verse 5. Or with his example that you see in verse 5. And so the person with intelligence, the person with wit, the person with skill in living, harvests during the summer, verse 5. "He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son." So someone who is intelligent with the skill of living is going to harvest during the summer. It's the disappointing person, verse 5, the one who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. The disappointing person, in fact, they're a disgrace of a person, is the person who sleeps during the harvest. That when we read the Bible, it's important to read it through the lens of the culture of the writer, the lens of the culture of the original readers, who was writing it, who was reading it. It gives us a lot more clarity in what they mean. Solomon lives in ancient Israel, which is an agricultural society, and so they would immediately understand the implications and meanings of this example. He's talking about harvest, he's talking about farming, and so the culture that he's writing to, that's the way they lived. They lived farming, they lived in that culture, everybody did that kind of thing, and so they would automatically get the implications of what he was saying. But we don't live really in an agricultural society anymore, and we aren't in an Israeli agricultural society, and so we need some context. Some of you grew up on a farm, maybe some of you are familiar with farming. I did not, I am not. My experience with farming is very minimal. When I was little, and you think it would be more, because when I was young, first 11 years of my life, I grew up in a house that was on a corner, and across the road to the right was a cow pasture, lots of cows, and a dairy farm, and across the road in front of me was this massive cornfield. And so there were farmers all around, and we had a guy that would come and tap our trees for maple syrup. I mean, we should have lived the agricultural lifestyle. I should have known a lot more about it than I do. But my experience with cornfields is we would go into the cornfield across the road, and we would play. I grew up with two sisters. Don't hold this against me. We would play house. We would play house in the cornfield across the road, and which is fun. Cornfields are like little mazes that you get to create. If you're the farmer. If you're not the farmer, you shouldn't create the maze. But I wasn't aware of that at the time. And so we would go across the road. And I remember one time that we were going to play house. And so I thought, I'm just going to make the house. I'm going to make all the rooms in the house. And so I slowly and methodically made hallways. I made all sorts of rooms by pushing over the corn stalks, breaking them, and flattening them. I mean, this was an elaborate house. We had hallways, we had rooms galore, right? It was great. I mean, and I was probably like 8 or 9 rows into the cornfield. So from the road, you can't see a thing, right? And so it was great fun. We had a lot of fun that day until we went back to the house. And the house that I grew up in, the cellar stairs, the roof went all the way down to the ground. Don't hold this against my parents. So we climbed up on the roof, and we looked, and there was a lot of corn on the ground. A lot of corn stalks on the ground. And my mom and dad found out, and my dad said, guess where we're going? We're going to the farmer. I don't remember his name, and you're going to tell him what you did. And all I remember is staying there on that front step being terrified out of my mind because we knocked down a lot of corn. Turns out it was a bumper year, and so we were spared from, I think, maybe my dad paid a lot of money for it. I don't really know. So that's my experience with farming. Right? Is that it's fun to play in the corn, but I am not a farmer. I've mentioned this before. I don't like growing things. maybe it's an unappreciation for fruit and vegetables, but I'm just not a big fan. I've said this many times. If pizza grew on trees, I'd be all about gardening, but I'm not, and it's not. But all that to say, some of you are like me. We didn't grow up in agriculture. We don't get agriculture. We're not familiar with agriculture. And so understanding what he's saying is going to be important for if you're like me and didn't grow up in that kind of society. And so we need a little context. So in Israel, this is background information for you. In Israel, the rainy season lasts from September to April. So it's the end of the year through the beginning of the year, the winter through the spring. It lasts from September to April, and that's followed by sun and heat that grow more intense from May up to September, and then the rainy season starts again. And what this does is it gives them a long planting season. And the possibility of multiple harvests, because they can plant for a while, there's a lot of rain, and it provides the opportunity for a lot of harvests in one year. And so in the winter, October, November, December, January, February, the winter they spend it plowing and planting. They spend the whole winter plowing and planting the fields, and after the rain of September all the way through the spring, after the rain, the harvest begins. And the harvest lasts from March to May. And so the majority of the year is spent planting and plowing, and then they do some harvest, and then there's kind of a break at the end. The planting and the harvesting of crops in the winter and spring really wasn't optional, because the first crops that they would plant and that they harvest would be wheat. It'd be the grains, it'd be the barley and all those things. And that's not really the optional harvest. You plant in the winter so you can survive in the spring and the summer. And so they're planting their grains so they can grow the grains and make their breads and all those things. That's not optional. They have to do that to survive. It's the breads and it's the cattle that they survive on. And so that first harvest there isn't an option at all. If you wanted to survive, you had to harvest, you had to work, you had to plant your grains, and you had to put in the time harvesting the grains in the spring when they were ready. When, as Jesus said, when they were white with harvest. You look out, you see them, you have to harvest them at that time if you want to survive. This is the whole society was dependent on this. If you remember the story of Ruth, this is when she would be out in the field to work through the welfare system, where you follow behind the people that are working for that specific harvest. If you don't harvest in the spring, the wheats, the grains, all that, if you don't harvest in the spring, then you bring poverty on yourself. You're not going to have what you need to survive for the year. You bring poverty on yourself. Lazy hands make for poverty. Right, but diligent hands bring wealth. And you'll notice verse 5, right? The person with prudence, the person with skill and successful living harvests during the summer. You see there it says the summer. It doesn't say the spring, it says the summer. There was a secondary harvest. The first harvest is in the spring, and that's the one that you need to survive. If you don't harvest then, you're going to be in poverty. You need to harvest in the spring. But there's a second harvest in the summer. It wasn't necessary for survival for them, the second harvest. But in the summer fruits ripen. What they planted in the winter, the summer fruits, they ripen in the summer, and then they can be harvested. And if you put in the work in the winter to plant your summer fruits, then you had a more luxurious, more profitable harvest in the summer. In the spring, you harvest what you needed to survive, but in the summer, you had a harvest of luxury, the summer fruits. And it's the figs, the grapes, the olives, not just the crops, not the grains, but the more luxurious produce. And the things in life that make it more enjoyable or wealthy, but it's also the hottest. It's also the hottest time to be harvesting. And Solomon says that the person who gets life, puts in the extra work and harvests in the summer heat also. Not just the spring, but the summer. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son. Someone who's going to put in the extra work and not just harvest in the spring, but also harvest in the summer is someone who gets life. But, verse 5, it is a disgraceful person who sleeps in the harvest. Not the summer harvest, the harvest, right? So the spring harvest, the one that's not optional, the one that produces the grains. And so Solomon is trying to compare two extremes. He's using hyperbole, an extreme comparison. He's saying that the smart person puts in the extra work, the extra time, and will reap the benefit if they put in the extra work and time. But the worst kind of a lazy person won't. In fact, the worst kind of a lazy person won't just avoid the summer harvest, that's extra work, but they actually sleep through the main harvest. They won't even work in the one you need to survive. And so he's using the two extremes there. There's a person who puts in extra work to get extra benefits, and then there's somebody who doesn't even work when you need to work, when you're supposed to work. That is the laziest of all people. So again, you see the advice here. Don't be lazy. Hard work pays off. But there's a deeper truth here that will guide us to successful, godly living. This isn't just about not being a workaholic. Because if you read this, you might think, well, then we just work, right? Be diligent. But that's not the deeper truth here. The deeper truth that will guide us to successful, godly living is this, that if we want to live a successful, godly life, then that means we must treat time as a gift from God. If you want to live a successful, godly life, then you must treat time as a gift from God. And how we use time then will change for the better the more that we develop our relationship, our understanding of God, and more we understand this. And so if we want to live a successful, godly life, then that means that we must treat time as a gift from God, and that will cause us to understand laziness is bad, but diligence is good. So I want you to look at verse 5 again. Now that we understand what the summer harvest is and the regular harvest, that he who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. The disgraceful, lazy person chooses sleep over work. Some of you have thought this sounds really good, right? In the morning, the struggle is real sometimes, right? You've got your alarm set, and if you're anything like me, you're thinking, I'm going to get up extra early. For those of you crazies that somehow wake up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning, I don't understand how you do it. There was a phase of months in my life where I was like, I'm going to get up at 5:30 in the morning, which ended up being 7. I don't know how you do it. So some of you are like me, where your alarm goes off, I have 2 alarms, which is bad, and they both snooze for a long time. So the struggle is real, getting up early, right, and making sure that, because the idea of, man, it would be nice to just sleep in and not go to work today. You've thought that. I know you've thought that. The disgraceful, lazy person chooses sleep over work. Chooses sleep over work. Doesn't mean if you had a sick day that you're a disgraceful, lazy person. That's not what I'm saying. This is a habit. This is a disposition. This is an attitude in life. The issue here, though, is less laziness than it is that the lazy person in this passage has a faulty understanding of the time that they have in life. The lazy person sleeps in the harvest because they don't have a healthy respect or appreciation for the days, the time that God has given them. The truth is that the time each person has, the time that you have, is a gift from God, and we shouldn't be wasteful of it. We should be good stewards of it. Moses understood this when he wrote, as we have recorded in Psalm 90, verses 10 and 11. This is Moses, not David, in the Psalms this time. But Moses says that our days may come to 70 years or 80 years if our strength endures. Yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass, and we fly away. And then he says this prayer to God. Teach us, God, to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Moses says we don't get many years. Right? They go by fast, and so he asks God, teach us to appreciate the time that we have so that we can live skillful, godly lives, right? Teach us to number our days so we can gain a heart of wisdom. In Solomon's day, in Proverbs, seeing time as a gift, numbering their days, appreciating them, counting them, taking care of them, and then living in wisdom meant that they worked hard and they avoided laziness. This is how it meant, and it was applied for Solomon. If I'm going to appreciate what God has given me in this society, then I need to work hard and avoid laziness. Someone who sees time as a gift from God wouldn't even consider sleeping through the summer harvest, let alone the spring harvest, because their time is a gift from God. And so, yes, we can apply this truth to laziness. If we want to live a successful, godly life, then we must not waste the time that God has given us on laziness. You can make that application. That if we want to live that successful, godly life, then we must not waste time that God has given us on laziness. We must be good stewards of what God gives us. Work hard, be diligent, don't just sleep your time. Do something valuable with it. Don't waste it on laziness. But like I said, this isn't just to give you a workaholic attitude where you think, well, then I got to go to work more. I got to do more. I have to be more active in that, because that's not necessarily a good thing either. So here's the thing. Our application is not finished. We need to complete this thought. We can't just leave it at don't be lazy. Don't get me wrong. That's a good biblical application. But we need to consider that there is a New Testament application as well. Because we live after Jesus came. And Jesus changed everything with his life, with his death and resurrection. And so that's going to give us another lens for our application of this proverb as well. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is, because in Solomon's day, this could give you a work hard, spend all your time doing that kind of an attitude. But we live in the New Testament, with Jesus coming, living, dying for us and our sins, that changes everything. And so how do the New Testament authors, how do they treat this truth as well? Not to waste the time that God has given us on laziness. Now, Jesus and the New Testament authors do give us further application of this proverb and the truth that time is a gift from God. James, he wrote a letter towards the end of the Bible. It's got his name on it. He echoes what Moses said in Psalm 90, and he describes our life as a mist. James chapter 4, verse 14. James says, "Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes." That's what Moses was saying, right? We get 70, maybe 80 years, and then it flies away. And James goes on to make application there that since our life is short, then we should make God's will the focus of our time. That we shouldn't be lazy, but that diligence means less focus on more work, more hours, more return, and focus on what is God's will then for my life. If there isn't that much time, what does God want me to do with my life? And so James would say, yes, don't waste your time on general laziness, but then he would take it a step further and say, consider what God's will is for your time. Consider what God's will is for your time. When Paul, he wrote a lot of the New Testament, when he writes to the Christians in the church in Ephesus, he tells them this in Ephesians 5. He says, be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil, meaning they're short. There's not very many of them. We don't get a lot of them. He says, be careful how you live. Be wise about how you spend your time. Make the most of every opportunity that you get, because the days are going to be shorter and shorter and shorter for you. There aren't a lot of them. Like Moses said, maybe 80. Our time is limited. What you do with each day, what you do with your time is very important. So the New Testament authors would say, spend it on God's will. What is God's will then? And spend it on that, what God wants. That's a big question that we ask ourselves all the time, right? And so you're like, oh, that sounds easy, but what does God want for my life? What is God's will for my life? That's a little bit harder. Well, the good news is Jesus himself gives us an idea of what that is for us. And he makes the very point in John chapter 9. This is Jesus talking, but Jesus was God. And so this is God telling us exactly what his will is. In John chapter 9, as Jesus went along, he saw a man who was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, that means teacher, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Neither this man or his parents sinned, said Jesus, But this happens so that the works of God might be displayed in him. As long as it is day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. It's an agricultural reference for that same culture. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. He clarifies what it is to do with our time so well. So the disciples see this man, and their assumption is, when they see this blind man, is that his condition is a result of sin. That he's being punished for his sin or his parents' sin, someone's sin. And so their question is, how did this man get this way? What caused this to be true in his life? And Jesus' response is to redirect their focus. He said that they shouldn't worry about what caused it. It doesn't matter what caused this blindness. Instead, what he redirects them to is that there's a better question that they should ask. The better question should be, what can we do for him? Not what caused this, but what can we do for him? Or maybe a better way to say it is forget how it happened. What does this man need, and how can we meet this need? What does this man need, and how can we meet this need? And what Jesus' answer reveals is that according to God, Jesus, according to him, our time is best spent, is even expected to be spent on the works of God, the will of God, specifically revealing the gospel to the people around us. He saw this man, and they want to talk about what happened to this man, and he says, no, the reason that we're here, the reason it is daytime right now, the reason that we have this opportunity is not to wonder what happened to him, it's to help him get better. What does he need? What can we do for him? This is why we're here. This is why we are here to help this man, to spend our time on the gospel, reveal the gospel to the people around him. So the question then is, well, what is the gospel? The gospel is Jesus. So that was easy for him to reveal it because he was there. But gospel just means good news. And the good news is that Jesus came and lived a life that we couldn't because we were sinful. But he came and lived a perfect life, and then he died to forgive our sins, and then lived to show us that salvation is possible through our belief in him. That truth, our belief that Jesus is our Savior and will save us one day from the presence of sin, our belief in that changes everything about us. If we genuinely believe that Jesus is who he said he was and that he died and rose for us, then that should change everything about us, because it means everything that he said is true and everything that he said has power, and it can change your life. And if that's true that it can change your life, then it can change the life of the people around you. And Jesus said we shouldn't worry about what caused this man's problem. What we should worry about is, what does he need now? What does he need now? And what he needs now is Jesus to change him. That's what he needs now. Don't be lazy and waste the opportunity that you have. Right? The will of God, as Jesus says, is that the best way to spend your time, and not be lazy with your time, is to focus on the gospel, develop its impact on your life. How does the fact that Jesus died and rose from the dead change my life every day? How does it affect me every day? Develop the impact of the gospel in your life, and then reveal its impact to the people around you. Don't be lazy with your time. Consider the gospel. Focus on the gospel. Don't waste the opportunities. Don't sleep through the opportunity that God gives you every day to develop the gospel in your life and the lives of the people around you. Don't sleep through the harvest. In this case, the blind man, with him revealing the gospel to him, meant healing him so he could better understand God. Jesus says the biggest concern is, what does this man need? He needs the gospel, and so we're going to take care of his needs. We're going to heal him. But I love Jesus' words in verse 5 of John 9. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world. This is what I do with my time. This is the best thing I can do with my time. While I am here, while I have time on this earth, while it is day, my job, my purpose is to be the light to this world. to reveal the gospel to the world. It's a great motto. It's a great phrase to remember God's will for our time on earth as well. Jesus is no longer here to be the light of the world. And so that truth applies to me, and that truth applies to you as well. As long as we are in the world, as long as we have time, as long as we have today, as long as we have an opportunity, we are the light of the world. To not reveal that light to the people around us and not develop it in ourselves would be to be lazy and sleep through the harvest. Our time is best spent on God's will, revealing the gospel, revealing His Son, and how He changes our life and He can change the lives of people around them. Our time is best spent doing that. That's God's will. And so Jesus would clarify Solomon's application. Solomon's application is don't be lazy, be diligent. Right? Work hard. Jesus would clarify that and say that time is a gift from God. Don't waste it on laziness. Spend it on the gospel. Time is a gift from God. Don't waste it on laziness. Spend it on the gospel. Night is coming when there will be no time left to be diligent in the work of God. We don't know how long we get. We don't know how long we have. Night is coming, and there will be no more time to be diligent on the work of God. So while we are in the world, we are the light of the world. We have to be diligent with that, not lazy. Look at how Paul applies this in Philippians chapter 1. He says this, he says, "For to me, to live, the time I have here is Christ, and to die is gain. If I'm going to go on living in the body, then this means fruitful labor for me. What shall I choose? I don't know. It is more necessary, though, for you that I remain in the body. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain, and I will continue with all of you for your progress and joy in the faith. While I am here, I am the light of the world. While I am here, it means diligent labor for me, not diligent work to get more money, diligent work to spread the gospel and share and reveal it to the people around us. Our time is best spent not on laziness, but on the gospel. I've said this before. You only get one June 9th, 2019. You only get one Sunday that is today. You're never going to get this day again. The hours that come after this service, you will never get them back. What are you going to do with your time? With the fact that God gifted you another day. He wanted you to have one more day. He gave you this time. And I wonder sometimes if He looks at us and thinks, why are you sleeping through this? Why are you being lazy with the time? I don't mean go out and trim your shrubbery. I mean, you could do that, but do it with an eye towards the gospel. Don't waste your time on laziness that God gave you. Spend it on the gospel. What are you going to do with that time? Don't waste it on what you think is going to make you most happy. Spend it on what will make God most happy. Don't sleep on the chance to do God's will for one more day, to let the gospel change you once more. Don't miss the opportunity to live the gospel in front of people once more and spread the gospel one more time, one more day. You have one more opportunity to help make more and better disciples once more. And when you wake up tomorrow, you think, He gave me one more day, one more opportunity, one more chance to spend my time on the gospel, on letting it change me and revealing it to people around me so that it changes them. As long as we are in the world, we are the light of the world. If we're going to go on living in the body, then this means fruitful labor for us. Why do you think God gives you another day? Solomon said, don't waste your time on laziness. Jesus and the apostles, they take it further and they say, don't waste your time on laziness, spend it on God's will. Spend it on the gospel. If we want to live a successful, godly life, then that means that we must treat time as a gift from God, which will change for the better how we use our time, how we live our lives. We won't waste it on laziness. Instead, we'll spend it on God's will, which always means cultivate a life of godliness, cultivate the gospel and how it changes you and the people around you. Some of you have been distracted by one thing this morning, and that is that the title of this says bucket lists. I don't know if you've made a bucket list, if you've thought about what you want to do before your time is up, things you want to check off the list. Maybe it's go to Hawaii, maybe it's jump out of an airplane, maybe it's those kind of things. You've got your things that you really, really want to do. I want to see, well, I was going to say Niagara Falls, but we live close enough. There are people whose bucket list is see Niagara Falls, so we're fortunate, right? I don't know if you've made a bucket list. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Those things that you just want to do. I never really thought about what do I want to have had the experiences of by the end, right? I think jumping out of a plane would be a lot of fun. I like falling. I like how it feels when you fall. I know that makes me weird, that there's some of you who are terrified of that, but I think it would be a blast just to jump and fall. With a parachute, obviously. If that's how I have to go, that's how I have to go. It'd be fun. So I don't know if you have a bucket list. I didn't really think about my bucket list until this week while I was working on this and started thinking, man, time is short. What do I want to do by the end? And this is what I've learned this week. If I have one more day to live, then I want to spend it on the gospel changing me and changing the people around me. If I only get one more day, jumping out of a plane doesn't matter. If I only get one more day to live, then I want the gospel to keep changing me and change the people around me. If that is your bucket list, then you will better live a successful, godly life. If that's what you want to do with tomorrow. You pray with me? God, I pray the same thing that Moses did. Will you teach us to number our days? Teach us to appreciate the value of the time that you have given us, not to waste it on ourselves, waste it on laziness when it comes to the gospel. Teach us to number, value, appreciate our time and our days so that we can live more wisely, so that we can live more successful, godly lives. God, help us to view our days as one more opportunity, one more chance to be changed by the gospel and to show the gospel to other people. I love you, God. I pray that you work in our hearts so that we make better use of our time and live godly lives. And I pray this in your name.